You're leaking a bunch of fluid. Dude, what is this? Oh, that's not engine oil.
This is my F1 V10 engine. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Well, let's just say that my beautiful V10 M6 is not very happy right now. We've come so far, and this is an amazing car to drive. It makes every little headache like this worth it. Trust me. You know, we've tackled almost everything so far. We changed out the coils. We did a full clutch job. We replaced a lot of seals on the transmission. We got to the rod bearings, new motor mounts. We even had some fun. New Alcantara steering wheel, carbon fiber bits, front and rear. And as soon as we decided to start driving the car like it was meant to be driven, boom, it broke. But guess what? Not just one thing, like 5 different things broke all at once. So we're gonna go over everything that's wrong with the car. We're gonna fix some of it today. And I know this is why people are scared of this car. They say, I don't wanna buy it because it constantly breaks. But trust me, it's worth it. By the time we hammer out everything wrong with this car, it should be bulletproof. And it's just an absolute blast to drive. So I wanna get to working on the exhaust, which hopefully will be the next video. So let's start figuring out what's wrong with it now. Now, what I'm gonna show you, what's wrong with the car right now, is very, very, very expensive. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in damage right now that needs to be repaired. Don't worry, we're not gonna give up. We are gonna fix this. I know right now it looks like it's gonna be an impossible task, but we're gonna figure out a way. Whether I have to find used parts on eBay or go to junkyards, which is probably what we're gonna do, we will be getting parts one way or the other, and we're gonna make this work. First thing wrong with the car, as you saw earlier, it's leaking transmission fluid now. Okay, problem uno. Well, we got the transmission leaking, which is not a good thing because we already pulled this transmission out. Now, pulling this transmission consists of removing the exhaust, removing all this heat shielding, removing the drive shaft, and then once you remove it, it's a pretty heavy transmission. There's no linkage, which makes it very easy. There's no actual linkage connecting to each other. It's all wired connections. What makes pulling this transmission hard is that there's not really a good spot. So we use our transmission jack with pieces of wood so that it doesn't destroy the lines. But you know, you got this cooler right here, very expensive. You got the SMG pump, if this thing cracks or breaks, very expensive. There's a lot of lines that go to very important parts that if those things break, we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars there. So pulling this transmission is kind of a really big job. You gotta remove this. You know, getting to those bell housing bolts is not very easy. Hopefully we could fix it without removing it, but I'm seeing some fluid right there and we got fluid all right here. So if it's coming from up here, we're gonna have to drop the transmission. Okay, next thing is the suspension. Now the suspension in this car is the reason why this car drives like a dream. I mean, it's hard to convey how nice this car drives, and it's due to this very expensive suspension system, and it's leaking. So the shocks are, I mean, they're not out. Like, it's not like bottoming out or, you know, just completely like sagging on the ground, but they are leaking, which means, you know, it's time for replacement, and they're about $1,000 a piece. We're looking at $4,000 just in parts. Genuine BMW. There's a lot of aftermarket coilovers you could do, which are much cheaper. Then you get rid of that whole EDC button. It will no longer become functional. I want to maintain that. Now, Bilstein sells an upgrade, which is like half the price, and you still get to have the EDC button work and have that great suspension. So that may be an avenue that will go down. It's not a like top priority like that we like the transmission, but this is something that's gonna need to be addressed very soon. Okay, if you watched the last video, I kind of went over the ABS problem we're having. In order for me to get a title made here in California, I need to basically get rid of all the dash lights that we got. Now, that means I gotta fix them, unfortunately. So the ABS system, that block is like $4,000. So if there's problems with that, it's obviously very expensive. Now, luckily, using our high quality scan tool, I was able to see that the motor is bad and is what is giving the code. So hopefully it's just the motor, that little black circle. Now that component itself for this car is about 900 bucks. But I have a suspicion, some people on the forums say yes, some people say no. I have the suspicion that as long as the serial number is the same, and I could get one off of like a 328i or 528i or 6 whatever, just another BMW around this era, I think I could just bolt it on and I think that'll work. Worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, you can rebuild them. So I will be rebuilding that piece. We have options. We're gonna figure out how to fix that. Okay, once again, guys, if I were to take this car to the dealership and see how much they wanna charge, it would be an arm and a leg. And that's why no one wants to buy these cars. And take it from me, I'm not a BMW expert. I mean, I've had a few BMWs. This was my first BMW I bought last year. I know very little about BMWs, but we're tackling these things because I wanna show you that this car is actually designed very well. And I know people say things like these cars are super unreliable and they break and they're terrible. They're not. They're really not that bad. You're getting Lamborghini qualities, Ferrari qualities, and a very cheap sports car. So of course it's gonna have the maintenance of a Lamborghini or Ferrari. But I believe most of this stuff, any DIYer could do it themselves. That's why I wanna show you guys, you can tackle these things yourself. It's not that hard. So even though that component is $900 and the whole block is $4,000, I know that I could go to a junkyard and get that little piece for about $7. And some days at the junkyard they have half off, so it might even be less than that. So we'll be able to fix this problem hopefully for dirt cheap. Okay, let's talk about the power steering. So since I got this car, it had a really loud winding power steering noise. You could say, oh, the power steering's broken, but the power steering worked, so it was low on fluid. We put fluid in, winding was still there. And this actually happens on a lot of BMWs and a lot of cars, so you get air in it. So you gotta bleed it, and one of the best ways to do that is to take the cap off, fill it up with fluid, leave the cap off, and then start up the car and turn the steering wheel back and forth, and it'll get the air out of the line. You gotta sometimes fill up some more. But we did that, and a lot of people were commenting on our earlier videos saying, oh, the power steering pump is broken, and it's this huge issue. That's not true. I'm not saying that this power steering pump won't break in the future, but we filled it up with fluid. I've put about 250 miles on it since then, and we got no leaks from there. So far, knock on wood. Sometimes it's as simple as putting fluid in, properly bleeding it, problem solved. So you got that whole train of thought where it's, if something's making noise or whatever, just replace it, spend all the money. And most, M6 owners, they take it to their mechanic and, just replace it. Most mechanics, they make money from selling you parts. They don't make money on the labor. They make money on selling you parts. So they tell you, replace the part, replace the part. It used to be back in the day, oh, if a part's broken, you fix it. And just like with our 335i, we didn't go buy a brand new $500 alternator. They don't even make the good alternators anymore. They use the regulators from China. So we had it rebuilt by an alternator guy who had the regulator from Hungary. So sometimes rebuilding it is not only cost effective, but it's better overall. So anyways, with this, we're good on that. Okay, let's look at the next thing. Okay, so as far as the motor goes, because everyone's interested in that. Well, we got multiple check engine lights. One really big one, putting us into limp mode. The other one, which is still important, that we're gonna tackle right now, is a thermostat. Thermostat is not working anymore. So I bought a replacement thermostat, and while we replace this, which we're gonna do that in this video, we're gonna do a full coolant flush. Because this car has been sitting in a junkyard and has been clearly deprived, it's not a bad idea to just flush the coolant. We got a thermostat right here. It's an OEM one. Looks pretty cool. It's kind of big, much bigger than one in a small block Chevy. If you don't know, what the thermostat does is it controls the flow of coolant, allowing you to warm up your engine faster. And then once your engine's warm, allow enough coolant to flow through. That way, you could cool down your motor. Very important piece. You don't want this getting stuck closed. You don't want it getting stuck open, because if it gets stuck open, it's gonna take a lot longer to warm up your engine. And I know you guys see me rip on it. I always let the engine warm up before I rip on it. And people are saying you need to break in the rod bearings. You don't need to break in the rod bearings. Once the car is warm and the oil's up to temp, you could rip on it because there's no wear pattern. It sits on oil. So rod bearings, you slap the new babies in, you could, take this thing to redline, which is exactly what I did. But obviously, you want to make sure that oil is up to temp. That way you don't blow up your motor. Okay, as far as the big problem with this engine, causing it to go into limp mode, causing it to act up, is the throttle actuators. Now, the throttle actuators are the other big thing that could go wrong with this car. It's not as common on this car as it is with the M3, but it is pretty common with the M5s and M6s. They are underneath this. So we got to pull this off because we got to get to the thermostat, which is right here, which you got 4 hoses going to right now. So it's kind of a big thing. So we're going to replace the thermostat. Throttle actuators, once again, true and narrow. And then, you know, we're not even talking about labor here. Getting a shop to do all this stuff, you're talking about big money. But it is actually pretty simple to do. You could do it yourself very easily. Throttle actuators are on their way. So we just gotta wait for them. The good news is that when we clear the code, it goes away for a little bit. And you could, you know, rip on the car a little bit and then it comes back. So we can at least drive the car a little bit. But throttle actuators have to get done because, you know, it kind of just pops up out of nowhere once you start getting on the higher revs. So let's remove this manifold and get to work on that thermostat. Okay, pulling that thing off was a little bit harder than I thought it would be, mainly just because this car is very beat and things are old and, you know, temperature, it gets hot, they get cracked. So one of these pieces broke right here, nothing a zip tie can't fix, but you have a lot of vacuum lines that go to that intake manifold. So look at this. This is beautiful. I mean, these are independent throttle bodies. This is what makes this car so special. This is what makes all the pain in the asses worth it. Because where do you see this other than like a fucking F1 car? A V10 independent throttle bodies. Look, here's the throttle linkage right here. Look at this shit. Opens up and closes, you know, when you give it gas. That is so cool. And it makes that amazing induction sound. This is just so special. The BMW engineers were fucking nuts when they decided to cram this engine in here. And then the fact that you could pick these cars up for dirt cheap. They're phenomenal cars to drive. I'm really becoming like a full-blown fucking M6 nut here. And I'm glad that I'm learning because, you know, who knows, maybe I'll buy another M6 one day. Or maybe a M5, the sedan version of this car. So now that that's off, we could get to the thermostat, which is in this spot right here. So if you look, see all these hoses? Right in there is where you put the thermostat. So we got to replace that. Also, throttle actuators. This would be so much easier if I had the throttle actuators right now, but we're gonna replace the thermostat, put everything back, and then in a week or so, when I get the throttle actuators, we'll have to swap them out. But they're right there, and they basically go to the linkage that controls that. We gotta drain the coolant. That way, when we start, you know, disconnecting this, we were not making a huge mess all over the place.
Okay, the next step for this process is to get all of that gross old coolant out of the car. Now, there are two drainage spots on this radiator. One is a lot higher. You don't have to flush out all the radiator, but because this car sat in a field for so long, it's a good idea to just do a coolant flush. We're already taking out half of it, so there's a little knob right here. I'm gonna use my rusty channel locks, and we should start seeing some fluid dribble out of here. Line my little, there we go.
A bunch of blue Gatorade.
You know, all things considered, it actually looks fairly clean. Okay, so now that all the blue Gatorade is drained out of the car, this is our thermostat housing. There's like 3 bolts. We already removed the coolant. It should be like a freaking breeze. Just hope I don't break any of these really expensive radiator lines. The YouTube video I watched is just slowly pry these out. Okay, so I got both of the big hoses disconnected. The bolts are out. Now it's just a matter of finagling this thing out of this tight little area. Okay, and there we go. That is, oh, sorry, oopsies. That is the thermostat, the old one, but look at this housing. 2 upper radiator hoses in this car and 2 lower radiator hoses. And this just has to pop out somehow.
Okay, removing the old thermostat was really hard because it was like baked in there. It did not want to come out. But with a little bit of persuasion, it came out. We got the new one, put that right in there. Just kind of hammer it in a little bit, and my Band-Aid just flew off. I hope it didn't fly into the engine bay. Well, it's in the engine bay. Now is the hard part. We gotta put it in. And you gotta be really careful not to fuck up anything. Okay, now we just torque them down to 10 Newton meters. Okay. I mean, I think everything's in now. Oh, I gotta put the main hoses in. Now that the thermostat's changed, it's time to fill up some coolant. I gotta use a fucking funnel. We got our funnel, so now we can actually fill this thing up. Oop. Right into the throttle body. Okay, so now that the coolant is in, we gotta run the engine, make sure it goes in everywhere. We're gonna leave the manifold off. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but fuck it, we're gonna do it anyways. And I'm sure these things will sound cool, so let's fucking find out. Okay, so apparently you can't run it without it. I've seen people do it before. Maybe it's one of the vacuum leaks from one of the lines. I don't know. We'll just go ahead and put the manifold back on and see what happens.
Oh yeah! Great success!
Okay, thermostat's done. Let's tackle the transmission leak.
So what we did to diagnose the leak was I had Noah sit in the car and just kind of let the car run, and I was down here with a borescope, which is a little wire with a camera on it with a little screen. And basically I figured out, it's kind of hard to tell, but this right here is a banjo bolt. So that banjo bolt had a few drips underneath it while it was running. So I'm pretty sure we found our problem. Now that's the good news. The bad news is it's really hard and it's a really tight fit to get any tools up there. Guys, with this leak, there's like a 90% chance we're gonna have to drop this transmission, which is a huge pain in the ass because you have to remove the exhaust, you have to remove the heat shield, the drive shaft, and you can only tilt it so much because it's connected to the motor and the clutch. So it's absolutely terrible to do, but there is a slim chance with a bunch of wobbly extensions and a little bit of creativity that we can get something on there and tighten it, because Noah's dumbass never tightens bolts enough. So I'm gonna go on a limb here and say, hopefully that's all we have to do. So fingers crossed, if we don't have to drop the transmission and we can get this done in a few minutes, that would be awesome. That will save us a ton of time.
Okay guys, we got our tool right here. It's actually supposed to be limp like this on purpose. This is going to make the job much easier. So yeah, let's just get this piece in there. Okay guys, we are on the banjo bolt, and now I just gotta tighten it and be very careful not to let it fall out.
Or break the banjo bolt.
Yeah.
It's going?
It's tightening.
Okay, don't go.
It feels like loose. Like it feels like it's like almost like it's about to get looser.
Can you get like a teensy bit more?
Just a little bit.
Okay, not too much.
Here, let's try that out.
Okay, Noah is going to start the car on the lift, and I'm going to inspect for leaks. So, fingers crossed, man.
Good?
Yeah, I think we're good. It's not leaking anymore. Yeah, dude, I don't see one drip anymore. So we're getting some drips. We're getting some drips right on this black reservoir. And I don't see any anymore. I think by some miracle, I think we're good to go now.
Okay guys, now we know everything that's wrong with this car. A pretty good game plan on how we're gonna tackle it so far. Transmission isn't leaking anymore, which was pretty stupid. It was my fault to begin with, but we fixed it. Thermostat is fixed. Coolant flush, got any yucky material out of there. So far we're doing pretty good. I think the car is, at least we could drive it around a little bit. We got to do the throttle actuators. We're still waiting on that. The next M6 episode coming out very soon. It's going to be very special because we're going to tackle the exhaust. That's right, baby. I got new valved mufflers we're going to be putting on. That way, from the touch of a button, we could go from refined to wild F1 sound. And we are doing a double X pipe because that's the only proper way to do the exhaust in this car. So we're building a custom X pipe. The car already has factory headers. So we're going to be doing a lot to this exhaust, and we will be getting lots of driving shots, sounds. We are going to see that beautiful F1 sound at full capacity very soon. So stay tuned, make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.